everyone, to a very special episode of The Buck Stops Here, and I'm your host, Kurt Buckner. I run NotInHallOfFame.com, the fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame, the fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the United States Athletics Hall of Fame, because I don't have too much on my plate. So I just keep adding and adding and adding. And I think I've got two gentlemen here who can sort of identify with that. And if you're a fan of football history, and if you're a fan of Black history, and you should be, it's February, this is the show for you. I'm joined here by Herman Smith and Ralph Paulk. They are the co-authors. Actually, there's a third co-author, I believe, of about Charles Follis. Greatness Transcends, and it's about the first Black professional football player. And I love when we look at history. And our mutual friend that we were talking about, Herman, Vinny Laspinuso, he always likes to joke how a lot of people think how football just began in the first Super Bowl. Well, a lot of people then might think, oh, no, it began in 1920. No, it began much further than that. And Herman, you were part of this lineage. When did you realize that your great granduncle, Charles Follis, was part of history? Like, when was that sort of like brought to you to learn about?
Yeah, it was when we were children. We were probably 5, 6 years old. It's always been a story in the family, passed down lineages. But I was probably 5 or 6 when I first was introduced to him through my parents.
And so, what were some of the stories that they that they told you about? And when you first realized, oh my God, he's the first, I would imagine that there's like a wave of pride that has to run through you at that point.
Certainly. Well, we come from a sports family. Our background. My father, uncles, and cousins, a lot of people, they played sports and football in particular. So I'll give you a story that's actually in the book that you referenced, Father's Greatness Transcends. Is on my first, as you can imagine, being nervous on your first way to practice, first Pee-wee football practice, but you've heard all these stories about your own father, Herman Smith Jr. So we grew up watching football, but on the way to practice one day, I tried to impress my father, looking for some words of encouragement. And I said, Dad, one day, I want to be as great as you were. And without stopping and turning around and looking at us, of course, he was driving us to practice. He said, son, if you think I was great, you should have heard about your mother's uncle, Charles Follis. So right then at that moment, that kind of blew my mind, because here you kind of hold your father to a superstar status, right, as a child. And even he has accolades for somebody else that we at that point had probably never heard of.
And Ralph, how did you become involved in the project?
Well, actually, I got involved many years ago in the mid-1990s. I was a sports writer at the Akron Beacon Journal. I kind of went through a bunch of old stories. One written by a gentleman named John Seaburn, had written a piece on Charles Follis back in the early 70s. So that kind of piqued my interest a little bit. But also, I was in Worcester one day doing a couple pieces on the Worcester Generals, who said having a pretty good football team that year. And someone told me about a woman who was somehow related to Charles Follis. So I caught up with her and we talked a little bit, and she started telling me stories about Charles Follis, about how great he was, all the stories she heard. So I decided to go back and research a little further, and I decided to write a piece, and I think the folks at the Hall of Fame got that. So at some point, my idea was, I've said for many years that we need to somehow grab the narrative about Black history. And this is one of the stories that was untold. And I think when you start talking about the National Football League, when it concerns the Black Americans, it's not quite accurate. So a lot of folks say that, this person was the first Black football player, and this person was, but the truth is, it was Charles Follis, way back in 1902. And so part of not just Charles Follis, but Black history in general, we need to go back and take a deep dive into it and correct a lot about what's distorted with Black history. And then for me, this is a good start. And it's also the emphasis is that while the book is about Charles Follis' life, and his family. It also deals with Black history in general. Some of those historical moments that probably don't quite understand, maybe never even heard about. So this is really a history book built around the life in which Charles Follis lived.
I was also doing as much research as I could here, and I'm going to be getting the book myself. One thing that I was really fascinated by, and I found this a lot with a lot of some of the older players, just like back then, they were jack of all trades. So Charles was a phenomenal baseball player, and this blew my mind. Jack Johnson's sparring partner at one point.
Oh yeah, yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah. And I'm a huge boxing guy. Yeah, I covered boxing for years, and uh, I found that pretty intriguing. And that really, quite frankly, I'm still researching, that aspect of the story, because I'm thinking of doing something a little deeper about boxer. In fact, I'm writing a book on Michael Dokes,
Oh,
a former heavyweight champion
yeah.
from Akron, Ohio, and that too is to kind of look into that. And part of that motivation was that story, about Jack Johnson and Charles Follis.
What do you know what his main passion was, baseball or football? Do we know that at this point, or what do we think?
I leave that to Herman, but I would say baseball.
I would agree with Rob. Um, Baseball was for many blacks back during that time period a source of freedom, a source of relief. Um, so, and it was only for whites at that time. So we, during the slave time, those individuals would, of course, admire and want to be partake in those types of activities. Um, so I think it's important that we remember that as well, of the time period in which we're talking about, of these wonderful things that Charles accomplished back then.
Yeah, and if I can add to that too, Kirk,
Sure.
I think it's important for people to understand that while we talk about Charles Follis as a pioneer of the first pro black football player, it's interesting to note that this is a gentleman who played football with Branch Rickey and played baseball with Branch Rickey. And I think because of that relationship, he actually was, paving the way for another pioneer, Jackie Robinson. So I think that can't go understated. That when we talk about him being the first pro football player, look at the impact that he had, really on the mindset, I think, of Branch Rickey, who decided, you know what, his relationship with Charles Follis, that I think had a great influence on him deciding here that, we need to get Jackie Robinson his opportunity to break the color barrier in baseball.
So from what I understand, throughout his 20s, he was not just a football player, not just a baseball player, not just Jack Johnson's sparring partner, but from what I've been reading, just like a big icon of his community. Is that safe to say? Like
Yes,
in times? Yeah.
most definitely. Um, it wasn't just his community; it was just society as a whole. Charles was involved with a lot of things other than sports. He partook in music. He had a wonderful singing voice, which was displayed in different concerts around the area with his sisters as well. And he was also involved with a lot of the Black activism uh, and pushing the Black narrative of advancement at that time. So one thing that we discovered during our research is the relationship between my uncle and W.E.B. Du Bois in the NAACP. He was instrumental in carrying that message, as well as uh, some of his $10 earnings per game were sent to the early starts of the NAACP. So there's a lot to Charles' multifaceted life that a lot of individuals today, we hope during Black History Month, they take heed to.
And
Yeah,
maybe not just Black History Month, maybe just all in general, like every month, because
That's correct.
this is something wonderful to sort of learn about. He died tragically at 31. So in 1910, I believe. I can only imagine, like with all the work that he was doing and with all the connections that he was making, how much more known and how much more impact he could have had, and maybe possibly the early death hasn't done history justice. I mean, nowadays, if someone dies young, they're almost canonized. But then we already got to know who they were. At that point, with only print media, it's just so much. It's so harder for anyone to sort of like continue that legacy. One thing that I want to ask how this sort of came about. He Today, as we're recording this will probably come out a couple weeks later. It's February 3rd, and it's Charles Follis Day in Ohio. Tell me how this came out, like how this came to be.
Well, this happened through a series of government officials drafting legislation to the state of Ohio. The funny story is, first time that it came about across the desk, it kind of got shoved to the side. So the officials had to go at it again and resubmit Charles, and then he was approved for Charles Follis Day as being the first professional Black football player, which is unique because, again, we're using the Charles's birthday as well as Black History Month, and then we're celebrating it with an Ohio law. So it's not too many people that have that impact. Well, you talked about that earlier, Kurt, as far as on the communities and society and the nation as a whole. Charles did, even though he was unable to see it while alive. It shows that Ohio and the nation is now recognizing the great things that he brought to the nation.
Also, in the town of Shelby, there is Charles Follis Way.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's recent also.
Fascinating. That's a fascinating story because when we talk about Shelby, right, we talk about a city that was known to be a sundown town, meaning that Blacks were discouraged by jail or by physical harm if they were out after dark. So to understand that point, to tell Charles living there, to today, that he now has a street named after him in that city, goes to show you how the society has turned around and come full face and tried to make the wrong and right.
Mm-hmm. You know, and I think it's important too, you know, we recognize the fact that for all of Charles Follis's accomplishments, when you think about, you know, this being Charles Follis Day in Ohio, having a street named after him in Shelby, yeah, a town that probably had maybe, you know, maybe even less than 1%, you know, his population back in his day, you know, are Black. I think these are just, forget about his accomplishments on the football field. I think a lot of folks sit in the hollow halls of the Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, with lesser accomplishments. I think either as a player and as an impact on the community. So in many ways, we make the argument, and I think convincingly so, that Charles Follis shouldn't just be recognized in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He should be inducted properly into the Pro Football Hall of Fame for all those things. Because when I think of him, sometimes I don't make the comparison between he and Dr. King. I do make the comparison between they lived short but impactful lives. And I think in the end, when their lives are over, you have a time to reflect about their impact and what they did. This is why people still revere Dr. King. It's why there's a Dr. King Day, because he impacted the community, not just his community, but the entire world. So from that standpoint, when I look at pro football, and I look at what Charles Follis has done, he's had a huge, huge impact on this game. Because if not for someone like Charles Follis, and Herman's mentioned this, you know, many times in our discussions, there would be none of the greats that we're talking about today. You know, the Jim Browns, you know, to see someone like Patrick Mahomes now, you know, with an opportunity to be a Black quarterback with 3 Super Bowl rings. You know, that has to stop somewhere. Just like with Jackie Robinson, there's no Reggie Jackson, you know, I know Vida Blue, you know, my baseball heroes. I just think that when you look at it that way, you have to look at also the impact he had on the community from a social and political standpoint. There's so much encompassed in his life that you just can't continue to overlook it. and overlook the fact that he should be. And I think with that argument, he should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame as inductee.
Yeah, everything before 1920 is a blind spot for them. At present, there are no pre-1920 players in the hall, black or white. Curious, have some of the current players or just past players in the last generation reached out to either of you just to learn more about Charles?
I've talked to a handful of players. I covered, the Browns and the Steelers and the Lions over the years. And I think what we find now is that a lot of the former players or current players I've dealt with in the past, it was an education for them.
Mhm.
They didn't know much about Charles Follis. And I think this is the point too, with the book, is to educate people, not just about Black history, but specifically about Charles Follis. So we're hoping that, I think really, not just the players in pro football, but kids everywhere in high school and college and other athletes. I think once they recognize it and understand it, they have a full appreciation for what he accomplished.
And since you brought up the book, where can everyone get it?
But right now, the book is available on all platforms, on hardback as well as ebook and paperback. So you can pick up the book at charlesfollis.org or any at your normal Amazons, Barnes and Nobles, so forth. So it's only available currently online at all those current locations.
Okay. And the Charles Follis Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and where people can find out more information?
Yes, the Charles Follis Foundation was started mainly to protect the legacy of the story of Charles, and also to give back through using Charles as a conduit to the community and those that are less fortunate. So the main three pillars of the foundation consist of education, art, which is consumed of music as well, and sport. So those three pillars right there, we want to make sure that we concentrate on in those underserved communities that need our help, and partner with other foundations in the community, like Ralph is involved with and a few others, to again give back to the community as using Charles and his history and to like I said, give back to the community. So that was started in 2021. And currently right now, you can read more about the Charles Follis Foundation and our mission at charlesfollis.org.
Okay. And Ralph, you've got a website that's opening up soon. Oh, you're on mute. And Ralph, you've got a website that's opening up soon.
Yes, ralphpaulk.com. And you can purchase the book on that website as well. So that's it. And more than anything, I think too, that in addition to purchasing, you can actually come to the website and hopefully we can redirect to the Charles Follis Foundation website, and you can learn about the history of the man and the athlete.
Okay, great. Thank you both so much for coming on. I encourage everyone watching or listening to purchase this book and to check out a little bit more about some football history that perhaps you didn't know too much about. And it's always great learning how everyone sort of got here and where we can continue as we progress. With that, check out all the other interviews. Oh, it's my pleasure. I enjoyed this very much. Check out all the other interviews we do at NotInHallOfFame.com, and wherever you are, wherever you may be, make it a great day because it never comes again.
All right. Take care.